rebooted this machine a few times to make sure the Hangout live stream's working.
Yeah.
Everything seems to be okay.
I think probably the reason why we couldn't hear Gary is because he's only US only.
No, it's because he's on a device that's just been reinvented.
Yes, there's never been a device like it before.
Yeah. Did you sell your Lumia 2550?
20?
2520, yeah.
I did, yes. Yeah.
You might want to keep hold of that because I think Apple have just reinvented it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you see the picture of the keyboard? Well, we'll talk about it.
Yeah. We'll talk about it.
Right.
I haven't seen any of the Apple announcement. I was just literally rushing in the door, so I've not seen any of that. So you'll have to tell me all about it.
Can you imagine a Surface Pro in your head?
Yes, I can imagine a Surface Pro in my head.
Congratulations, you just invented the iPad Pro.
But for the keyboard, it just add the Lumia keyboard, and then you've got it. That's it, basically.
Yes, it's a Surface. Right. Okay, I've got it. Yeah, that's fine. I can have one of those.
But just to make sure Steve Jobs was still correct, there is no place for a stylus in the world of the iPad.
Okay.
It's a pen.
So,
yeah. Right. Okay. Jason, good evening.
Good evening to you, Ian.
And Gary, kind of welcome back. You were here last week for the beginning of the show.
I'm sort of here, ephemerally. We love dodgy Wi-Fi, but back from Berlin now, so I'm actually, I think, probably better connectivity than I was last week.
Yes, sounded very nice. So I think we're going to have quite a busy show this week. We've got a new build of Windows 10 to talk about. Oh, wait, no, we don't.
So near yet, so far.
Yeah, and in fact, Microsoft took to explain why they haven't got a new build, so we can talk about that. I know, Gary, you've got quite a lot from IFA that you wanted to cover, some stuff you've seen.
IFA and some bits after IFA as well, which are rather exciting. And
there's the Lumia 2520's back.
It is.
Kind of.
Productivity
reinvented. Yeah, okay.
Well, by that, of course, we don't mean that literally, as Alan Partridge was saying. Of course, I'm only joking. But Apple keynote tonight, and where I didn't see a lot of it, I saw bits of it. I did very much enjoy my Twitter feed, snarking at all the announcements on there.
Yes, and a very unexpected guest.
Yes, that's right. So we can talk about the Apple event as well, and there's some of the stuff that they talked about there, which will sell very well, regarding no matter how good or bad it actually is.
But exactly. Yeah.
Some of it does look quite good, so we can talk about that as well. And what else? We had other stuff to talk about as well. US centric services.
Yes.
Jason's got
started.
Yeah. So we'll be talking about that, and because you've got all your movies now on your digital locker with your Disney account, haven't you?
Absolutely, yeah. It's brilliant. Yeah. It's this amazing idea. You could buy a movie once and just play it anywhere.
Yeah, we could talk about that. And there's a new Skype app, the Universal Messaging app, that we're going to be seeing in Windows 10 is actually available for the phone. So we have been playing with that. But we're using that today, and other stuff as well. So where we start? Let's start with the Apple stuff, because that's still fresh in my mind.
Yes, no, I've been quickly trying to catch up on my Twitter feed before we started recording.
Oh yes, and I do, just to make I do want to mention the Windows Media Center guide data problem as well. So that we talked about last week, but that's still ongoing. So we'll come back to that as well.
Yes, not to mention the sensibility about trying to install Windows Media Center on Windows 10.
Oh yes, actually, yeah, I haven't. Does it? In fact, we'll mention that at the start, because I deliberately didn't do a post on this. And,
yes.
Many of the less reputable websites, jumped on it and posted on how to do this, and I definitely don't think it's a good idea. So, explain to us, Jason, what was the story that was going around?
Well, just rewinding slightly now. When we initially started talking about Windows Media Center on Windows 10 and the fact it wasn't going to be available, I did say at the time that I'm sure it wouldn't take long for someone to make it happen. Now, my expectation was that a bit like, I think there was a way to do this on Server 2008, or at least Home Server, that if you had the components, you could copy them off one machine and kind of with a bit of hacking and messing about, you could install them. But at least you were getting the components yourself. But what I guess, to be fair, a group of clever people have done is they've managed to take the components of Windows Media Center and basically create an installer package. Using those components. That means Media Center will install and run on Windows 10. But from what I've seen, it seems to be that that doesn't necessarily provide the tuner level support, or cable card support, or even, I guess, maybe protected content support. But I think the real worry is, which is ironic given all the privacy fears that have been going around about Windows 10, and these components are being distributed from untrustworthy, not untrustworthy, but so they're not
unverified.
Yeah, unverified. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I don't want to cast aspersions on people incorrectly, but yeah, so unverified, unsigned, anything could be included in these packages that could be creating a backdoor into your system. And I think ultimately, Media Center isn't packaged with Windows 10. If you're that desperate for it, really, you should be looking to run Windows 7 or Windows 8. But there seems to be, as you say, quite a few sites that are discussing it. I think Edbot came up with some classic comments about just either move on or stick with what you've got. If you download and install these components, then I think I agree with him. I think you've got to be some kind of idiot to do that, because there is absolutely no way you can have any confidence in the integrity of your system after you've done that. I mean, downloading files off Dropbox or some kind of torrent site is just not the way to go.
No.
Agree. let's move on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and that's the reason why I didn't link to any of the stories, because I just think it's that you're asking for trouble. If you really like you said, if you're really desperate to get Media Center going, then just get Windows 8.1, Windows 7. If you can follow all these hacks, you can certainly get Windows 7 and Windows 8.1 working.
I mean, the other thing is that I've actually got Media Center running in a virtual machine on my Windows 10 box as a Windows 7 box, and it works. I've got tuner support and everything, so there's no point in doing this.
No, and if it's really it's only the tuner support that is really the thing that you can't do already. There's lots of third-party apps. You've got MB, Plex, Media Portal. Yeah. There's loads of different ways.
There's enough stuff to write a book about, really.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think underlying it all, the most worrying thing from what I've seen, just briefly following this on Twitter, was that a lot of these components are installed running as kind of the system account, and that's the highest possible privileges you could have on your system. Yeah. So just please keep well away from it, and no matter how tempting it might be.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, we will not be supporting this.
Yeah, don't do it. Look for another solution if you really want some on Windows 10, and or go with the older OS.
Buy an Xbox One.
Yep.
Yeah, which will soon have PVR stuff in it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and even if you did get it working, you wouldn't have any guide data for your recording.
Yes, is that still not been resolved?
Yeah, as of last night, it wasn't working. I've not asked, because I haven't got my Media Center machine set up now because I've got Windows 10. I haven't tested it, but yesterday it wasn't working. And I did see that there's a guy on Twitter, I'll find the link for the show notes, who is a project manager or program manager in Redmond, that's looking into it. But it was Labor Day, wasn't it, this week in the States? Yeah. So he wasn't in the office. So it shows you how high priority this really is. I mean, this used to be handled in Dublin, didn't it, Gary? All the TV stuff.
At one stage, yeah. So it was all out in Europe, but not anymore.
Yeah. So there is a possibility that it'll come back and that they'll look at it. I presume it will.
Well, it's still a supported product, and it's paid supported product. So people could ask for their money back if they don't.
But there is in-band guide data.
There is, yeah. You can still use all the DVB-T stuff to get your data that way, or DVS, whatever.
Yeah, and you can use DigiGuide, and there's other ways of doing it as well. But hopefully Microsoft will get that sorted. But we'll keep on to them, because the people have paid for it, so we won't let Microsoft leave it quiet.
Yeah.
Right. So back to something completely different. It was the Apple keynote tonight where they rolled out, and this seems to be what Microsoft are planning to do, I think, isn't it? All the rumors to multiple devices in one sort of keynote. So, like I say, it was great watching my Twitter feed. But a new iPhone, the iPhone 6S, a new iPad, the iPad Pro, and a new Apple TV. We'll start on the Apple TV because I want to talk a bit more about the iPad in a moment. But
there was also the iPad Mini 4, wasn't there?
Oh, was there? I even missed that.
Yes, I missed the iPhone, so I'll be interested to hear your view on that.
So, well, I don't know anything about the iPad Mini then. So, but the Apple TV, like I said, I haven't seen the keynote, so at some later tonight, I'll probably watch the keynote and then have time to actually to diagnose what's what's new in this. But interested, this really is a new revamped Apple TV. It looks the same in terms of the little box, but I think it's got Siri built into the remote, and they're really going with the app angle. If you go on the Apple TV website on Apple site, they're all talking about apps: Netflix, Hulu, ABC, Disney, Showtime. It's all about the apps, and that's really the center of this new Apple TV is an app platform.
If only Rocky would have got there first.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And what I'm just trying to see is this going to be apps like the old Apple TV where they were put on by Apple and that was it, or is it going to be the store and the way that developers can submit their content? So MB could write an Apple TV app and submit that to the store. I'm not quite sure yet whether that is the case. I'm just I'll find out that as I watch the thing. I don't know if you've seen anything on that.
I haven't, but it kind of makes sense that they do open it up. I mean, that has, that's been the underlying success, hasn't it, of the iPhone and the iPod and, then the iPad. So it certainly makes sense for them to open up some kind of store rather than have it just purely Apple curated applications. Although, you could argue that's still the way the Xbox works. Although, the Xbox One with Windows 10 is supposed to open that up somewhat. But yeah, I think, there's so many different TV services around the world. You wouldn't necessarily, I think the time for a device where the, device manufacturer dictates what apps you can have, I think is kind of almost a dead end. There's always going to be that application that you want. So why stop you publishing it? You've already got your sandboxed environment. I presume it runs some kind of version of iOS. So
tvOS.
tvOS, yeah, of course.
Yeah, tvOS.
Yeah.
Developers can access the tvOS beta from today and start working on apps.
Oh, so there you go.
Yeah, so I've just got that through on email. So yeah, they have to do this. I mean, they're losing a huge amount of ground on the TV side of things because one of the key things I spotted at IFA was basically other than Samsung, everybody's and LG to some extent because they got their own OS. Everybody's going for Android for their TVs. So, I mean, okay, those two are fairly big manufacturers, but you've got Panasonic and Sony and everybody doing the Android TV approach. So, Apple need to fight back in that area, maybe sign some deals with TV manufacturers as well.
I wonder how distinct the developer platforms are as well. I mean, tvOS isn't iOS. No. Obviously, they're going to be pretty close, but it's not the strategy of Microsoft to go in with the universal apps, and whether that's that's something I think still Microsoft got an advantage in, that you can do this right once and then deploy to many types of platforms.
Yep. Well, I'll probably get a bit more information ready for next show.
Yeah.
I'll learn a bit more on that, but I mean, yeah, it makes sense to have an app environment these days.
Yeah, and I just the Xbox One was supposed to get this. We still don't really know when that's going to happen, do we? An app store in the Xbox, just in any app.
No, we don't.
I mean, they have been touting this one app, Windows 10. So perhaps it's when Windows 10 gets it upgraded onto the Xbox.
Yeah.
I did see. I'm sure it was $150, something like that. I'm just looking for the price now, but. Yeah, the Apple TV. So I have an Apple TV. I haven't used it for years, 2 or 3 years now. I never use it. I use a Roku stick or a Roku 3, and I've got my Xbox One, and that's all I really need. But it does look a nice device. It's only a little thing. It's got a little remote that comes with it, and you can use Siri on it, and with the apps it's good. And if you're, as ever with Apple stuff, if you're sort of all in on the Apple ecosystem with buying your music and movies and things like that, then it does make sense to have that as a device. And once you get, maybe Plex will be on there, I guess, and MB, and it does mean then that you've got it's a nice media device. I still prefer the idea of a Roku, which seems to have the best of both worlds. Oh, I've got the pricing here. The 32 gig version is $149, and the 64 gig is $199. So they've still got that concept of storage on there, haven't they? So it's not just a streaming device.
But I think they had to retain that because a lot of people use their Apple TV for downloaded content. So it'd be interesting to see how you transfer it from one to the other.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's to your account and to your store. And what's the chances of Microsoft making movies and TV available for that then? They could do, couldn't they?
They could do, yeah. They could.
I'm sure they'll get Groove Music on there.
I'm just looking at the developer specs on this, and it does actually look like it's relatively easy to port an iPad, iPhone, Universal app across to the TV. Another type of Universal app, but yeah. Apple version of it. But yeah, that looks relatively easy to port.
Yeah, and the remote's it says it's a Siri remote with gyroscope, accelerometer, lightning connector for charging. So you've got to charge your remote to control up. Rechargeable battery as a month as well. So, and it's got a touch display on there. And the actual ports on the Apple TV are a USB-C, HDMI, Ethernet, and power. An elegant device, and like I said, if you roll in with Apple, then it's good. I just never got any use out of mine. I thought I'd get a lot more out of it, but the only thing I use is Plex, MB, and Netflix, and those are satisfied by the Xbox One or a Roku stick. So, So I mentioned about Microsoft being on the Apple TV, which sounds a bit crazy. Almost as crazy as Microsoft showing up during an Apple keynote.
Yes, I've just been reading that.
So, Jason, did you see that?
No, I didn't.
Right. So, one of the other devices they announced today, which really is the device that's competing with what I'm looking at right now, is an iPad Pro competing with something like the Surface Pro 3. So this is a new device, and I think it's got 12. I'll just bring the specs up.
12.9 inch.
12.9 inch display running at 732 by 2048. So that's slightly higher res than the Surface, I think, isn't it? Surface Pro 3.
And yeah, another different resolution and aspect ratio.
Yeah. 12.9 inch. Yeah, like you said, 78% larger than the iPad 2.
Yeah, I guess it is a 4:3 iPad aspect ratio, though, so it is the same as the standard iPad ratio, so at least it works.
Now, so yeah, an interesting device. It's a Pro, and it looks like a direct response, really, to the success of the Surface Pro 3. I'm sure the Apple lovers might say it's nothing to do with the Surface Pro 3, but it does seem to me like the success of the Surface Pro 3, and perhaps a desire to create a new product because they've gone smaller, so they're not selling as many iPads. They've tried smaller. Let's go bigger.
I think the best comment I saw on Twitter was the fact that this kind of validates what Microsoft have been doing with the Surface Pro lineup all along.
Yeah. So it's just a bigger iPad, but I remember saying that about the original iPad, saying it's just a bigger iPhone, and where it is, it's something beyond that. So I think it's got potential, but it doesn't half look like a Surface Pro 3 type device, because it comes with a pencil, not a pen, a pencil. Well, it doesn't, well, I should correct myself. It doesn't come with a pencil. You have to buy a pencil for it.
Yeah.
And it comes with a keyboard as well. Correct myself again. There is an optional keyboard. And as we started, I've seen some pictures of this keyboard, and it works exactly like the Lumia 2520 keyboard.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I obviously had my Lumia 2520 and loved it. And yeah, the way that the keyboard cover kind of provides the stand. Although obviously, we know from experience with the original Surface RT that that a single position kickstand isn't the most ideal, and even with the Lumia 2520, that kickstand, the way it leant was just slightly too upright. I found myself kind of sitting back in a chair to kind of get to a comfortable position.
And I don't know whether this has got that stand is adjustable, but I'll give you the prices on these. So the 32 gig one is $800, and the 128 gig one is $949, and the 128 gig one with 3G, 4G is $1,079. So they are certainly an expensive device.
I think we just found the new pricing for the Surface Pro 4.
Yeah, because the Surface Pro 2 that came with its pen included, and so does the Surface Pro 3. I know the Surface 3 doesn't, but it's not necessarily directly what this device is aimed at. But yeah, it's. I think it does. It's easy to kind of throw stones, isn't it? But at the end of the day, Microsoft. It's nice to see Microsoft driving a bit of innovation or rethought from Apple, just as Apple did with Microsoft. We probably wouldn't have Windows Phone or Windows 8, love it or hate it, without the Apple innovation in terms of that space. So I think more and more Surface Pro 3 has been making some really good inroads to enterprise usage, and Apple did initially make some inroads with the original iPad, so it kind of makes sense that they'd want some kind of tool that's more designed at productivity with the keyboard and with the split view screens, which is very reminiscent of Windows 8 and now Windows 10. So I think ultimately there is people that work will need that slightly bigger device. They need a device they can use as a tablet, but also have that ability to use it with a mouse and well, actually no, there is no mouse, is there? But certainly with a keyboard.
Yeah, to me it does. The reason why I like the Surface Pro 3 is the fact when I'm using it as a tablet, it's a tablet, but then with the keyboard, it's a full PC. There's no restrictions on it. I can install whatever I need to install in there. So I've got the audio editing software on there. I've got my video editing software. I've got putty or whatever tools that I need, I can get on there. But it's also a very nice tablet and with a nice modern interface. The iPad 3, I guess it comes down to the apps, but so the iPad Pro. It comes down to the apps, but I'm not sure. I certainly couldn't really imagine me carrying one of those instead of the Surface because it just wouldn't give me enough the tools. Certainly say, Gary, you could work with the Surface Pro 3 in your line doing developing, but you couldn't use an iPad Pro to do.
No, I couldn't. Well, unless they port Xcode or something across to it from the Mac, but no, certainly in the modern moment I couldn't do.
Yeah, and Jason, same for you, really. But I know it's a bit your bias like me because you're in that sort of sequel thing with the Windows industry. So, but it doesn't seem to. It's a pro device, but it's not the complete productivity device of a Surface Pro 3 or a laptop.
No, I mean, for me, the obvious comparison is the fact, I wouldn't be able to install Hyper-V on it, so I wouldn't be able to run, my SQL clusters and whatnot that I need as part of my job that pays pays for us to live. But I also accept that there are, kind of salespeople out on the road that don't necessarily need that adaptability, and in many ways, we know iOS has kind of set the standard really. They don't suffer from this app gap. They've got productivity tools. Obviously now Microsoft have got Office on there, which we could we'll talk about with them sharing the stage even with Apple. They've got those kind of apps. I'm sure there's probably some kind of Telnet app. They've kind of got those bases covered, but yes, in terms of a pure Office server solution and those kind of requirements like we have, then yeah, it's certainly not going to fit that bill.
And I couldn't. And I'm just not sure exact market for this, because I think if you're really into the Apple ecosystem and you wanted a device that you can use for productivity like that, then there's a really good selection of Macs, that they do that are ultra lightweight, thin, really long battery life. So I think you'd go for one of them, perhaps over the iPad Pro. But like I said, maybe there's this middle ground where it fits in.
Yeah, I think there is, and also having seen it time and time again on the train and at different conferences and whatnot, there are so many people that pull out their iPad and then pull out their little funny keyboard attachment or a little stand to rest it on. And I think ultimately those are the people that they're aimed at, because I'm sure they would never admit it, but their solution is a compromise. It's they've got to carry around all these extra bits, and they need, if it's not a keyboard that has got a stand built into it, you've got another stand which you've then got to find room for. And so I can certainly see a market. But again, another fantastic tweet I saw was basically saying, well, it doesn't look very lappable. And I mean, the Lumia 2520 was usable on the lap. It was too upright, but at least it had the battery in it, so it had that bit of weight to it. Now, as far as I can tell, it's literally just a Surface type cover, so I can't imagine there's much weight to it. And I think that kind of comes back to the whole issue of the original Surface. It's taking that Lumia 2520 design, it does give it some stability because of that kind of the triangle it creates at the back. But like I say, I think most people on their lap would find that it's just too vertical. Yeah,
I'm just having a look at the pictures on here, and it does look like it's fixed at one angle.
Yes, yeah, I'd have thought so. I mean, certainly by that design, it's very difficult, because the keyboard's got to start somewhere. So, the only way to make it more angled is to bring the bottom of the device forward, and that's going to then start covering keys.
Yeah, so, and it does look, and it does look very much like the Lumia. Other than that, you could see the sort of a hint of the Surface keyboard, although the keys look a little bit more, perhaps smaller on there. Just looking at the picture, the keyboard, by the way, is $169. Which is similar priced, probably that's more expensive, I think, than the type cover, and the pencil is $99. So yeah, lappability I think will be an issue looking at that picture, but remains to be seen. But it is interesting that they've I'm seeing a lot of this in the Twitter, Surface like iPad, keyboard, pencil, universal apps. Where's the innovation is all coming from Redmond? But like you said, these things do go around.
Yeah, they do. They certainly do. I mean, I think one thing I'd be interested in seeing some of the market analysis of this, just because I'm wondering where the purchases are going to come from. Are they actually going to be getting purchases from people who've got laptops, tablets, and PCs? Because I don't really think so. I think it's actually going to probably affect more their own market. It's going to be stealing. I mean, okay, maybe they want to get people buying iPads who've already got iPads, and I can understand that as they need more revenue coming through that one way, which makes sense. But it does sound to me like it's going to be more taking people away from those than it will be anything else.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly, the big limitation from iOS, and the reason I think why the Surface Pro 3 has taken off so well in business is, Windows has all that enterprise manageability, data encryption, being able to choose what people can and cannot install on it. I know iOS has been gaining features in that space, but it's still not as manageable. You can't join it to a domain, so then you've got to look at having some kind of secondary authentication, and it's just from a business supportability perspective, just Windows wins hands down.
Yeah, I'm sure it will do well, but I think it seems more of a niche product than the other iPads. Especially the standard one or the iPad Mini. They're devices that you can see are used around the home. Family use them, and that's the sort of the standard device almost. But the Pro, that's much more of a niche device. I think you have to have a special. So you have special needs for that.
Yeah, and of course the other issue, of course, is that enterprise is sourcing these devices. So obviously Microsoft fired their shot yesterday with the announcements of the HP and Dell tie-ins, that Dell and HP will actually be selling Microsoft Surface Pros and providing the support and enterprise integration. So that is I think for Microsoft is a big plus in terms of trying to stop this iPad Pro making inroads into their kind of bread and butter.
Yeah. I think it's going to be okay. I think you know what it's going to. Well, we're going to really hate seeing though is people walking around taking pictures with them and they go. That's good. I was at Hampton Court the other week and there was someone there taking pictures with their iPad. The big iPad. And I can imagine.
Though I have to say, I did see people taking pictures with their surfaces at EVA.
Oh no! Please don't do it.
Well, actually, that's okay especially if you're blogging because you can put your photo straight into Word. Using your Surface.
No, Ian, it is never acceptable to take pictures with a tablet.
I did. I think it was a CES Samsung keynote, and I just put the picture straight into Word. It was brilliant. Hold the Surface up, take the picture. It's in the Word document. Carry on writing. Get the blog post done.
Use your phone for camera to do that. It's a lot more discreet.
Yeah. I think to be fair, I think Ian's getting confused. It wasn't his Surface he's holding up. It was his phone.
Yeah, I mean, what's the difference? Actually, this iPad Pro might be nice new phone.
Yeah.
And talking of new phones as well, they do have a new phone as well, which really is their bread and butter, isn't it? This is the iPhone 6S.
Is that the 6S? Will there be a 6S Plus as well?
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
So they have.
See, I expected the iPad Pro to be the iPad Plus. I think that would have fitted in much nicer with their naming strategy, but.
So yeah, there's a plus. So the 6S starts at $649 and the 6S Plus $749. But I did see someone on Twitter say that the pricing for the 6S is the same as the 6 UK pricing. So
presumably these are just kind of spec bumps. This is kind of like the talk of the TikTok release, isn't it?
It is, but it's got something called 3D Touch in there.
That sounds familiar.
Yes, which is they call it 3D Touch because I think it's this Force Touch thing, isn't it? Where it knows how far you've pressed down with your finger, which isn't that what the McLaren phone was supposed to do? The Windows phone that never was.
Yeah, I think similar things to that. I mean, I think the sensing is slightly different. The whole 3D thing on the McLaren was even above the surface, so you wouldn't necessarily be touching it to get some interaction. Whereas this is definitely touch. From what I'm reading here. I mean, it's a nice thing to have, and it's going to make developers' lives even more hell. But there we go.
It's got a 12 megapixel camera, which I'm quite surprised with. I thought it would have a slight higher than that. I'm just reviewing the Lumia 830 at the moment. That's got 10 megapixel for whatever, 200 odd quid. I mean, as ever, it looks nice, and it'll have, like you said, it'll have a spec bump. It takes 4K video. It's got improved processor. They say
I think the only thing I would say about it is it's quite a bit heavier than the previous one.
Is it?
What I was reading, unless I'm reading specs which are incorrect, but there seem to be a substantial up scale in the weight, which is unusual for Apple. I guess that's because they've got the new screen technology in there, the couple of other things as well. But let's just see if I can dig that out again. But it was, I mean, it's 143 grams as opposed to 129 grams. I mean, 14 grams is actually quite a significant up when you carry it, isn't it?
Yeah, because the 6 does feel very light. I know my wife's one is very light, but
I mean, it's almost 10% increase in weight, which is quite a significant up scale. But again, I guess it has got a lot more stuff in it. So
hopefully, it'll have a better battery life, because I think that's one of the issues. Although I think the 6 isn't as bad as the 5 was.
So same battery basically. Right. So same processor, same battery. Upgrade on Bluetooth. Slight upgrade on the some of the chipset bits in it, but basically it's the second gen Touch ID, the 3D Touch, and a slightly different.
You have it in rose gold.
Yeah, color. That's basically it, really, isn't it? And better cameras. Like the cameras do add weight, so I can see that. I mean, there's a 5 megapixel front facing camera as well, which is obviously the world of selfies.
Yes.
Hope it won't suffer the complications of third-party developers, though.
And what's this? Explain that.
That was the what I believe to be related to the Apple Watch.
Yes,
which suffered from complications. It's I think people are using it wrong, basically.
Yeah, I think
that's always the way.
I think that was related to the developers, third-party developers, wasn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
it was. Yeah.
So I mean, I've got, you know, as ever, Apple devices always look great, and they've got a great feel to them. It's just I'm not really. I haven't used iOS for a while, and then I sort of drifted away from it because it's just, I don't know. It's very it's flat, but it just feels old fashioned to me now. But I've seen how my wife uses hers, and she loves hers, and she'll never use that 3D touch, though. I know that. You know, it's the same with the fingerprint reader. She never really uses that either. You just get, I think. I was looking at sort of a app usage pattern. It's Facebook, Twitter, Facebook, Twitter, email, browser. That's it, really, isn't it? Which does kind of say, you know, well, what about the app gap? Because it's certainly there is for the apps that she uses, they're all there in Windows Phone. But anyway, she likes her iPhone, and I wouldn't be able to persuade her the other way.
Yeah, I mean, they are nice phones. They're certainly getting away from that. But I'm with you, Ian. You know, when you look at the interface, it just, you know, I know that, you know, live tiles isn't for everyone, but, you know, compared to iOS, iOS just looks so dated and so kind of static and you know, flat.
Even iOS 9.
Yeah, and so this is one thing I haven't really seen too much on yet. So I'll probably get to watch the keynote, and then be able to talk about it a bit more next week. But yeah, iOS 9's there, and that's going to be available for the second, was it the iPad Mini, the second iPad Mini, and it's got split screen on there.
Yeah, on iPads, of course, not on the iPhone. But
yeah,
launching September the 16th, I believe they said. It's basically going to be available for anything which runs iOS 8. I could work out.
It's no Windows 10.
There are a few changes in it, but too major.
Yeah, so we'll talk about that a bit more next week. I know the split view really is the thing, isn't it, for the iPad Pro that they're going to need. But this, I mean, I think they've already demonstrated this in earlier keynotes. But the split view, it does look exactly like the Windows 8 one.
Yeah,
and I've kind of stopped using that one. It's gone on to Windows 10. So anyway, so an interesting keynote, but I said this before. I think my view on Twitter is probably what's the word? Bias slightly from the people that I follow. But I don't just follow people that are Microsoft fans. I also do follow Apple fans and general tech enthusiasts. And it you know, there doesn't seem to be anybody particularly impressed. And there's a lot of snark about, but there'll be good sellers. There's no doubt about that. But then I thought the watch would be a bigger seller than it actually is. I know that Apple haven't talked about numbers, but you can usually tell by devices you see out in the wild, and there's not a huge amount of Apple Watches. So maybe the iPad Pro will be a niche device as well. But yeah, we'll see.
Mm-hmm. Talk about keynotes and boring keynotes. We haven't mentioned Microsoft's E for keynote.
Oh yes,
I've heard a lot of talk about that.
Oh yes, so let's talk about the. Hello to Brian in the chat room, because he's in the chat room. It's good to have Brian in there. In fact, we can ask Brian: is the guide data working? Because Brian has been trying that one. Yeah, it's still an issue with the guide data. So Brian's saying, and there's no known fix apart from what we were saying before. So Brian, you'll have to go back to listen to the early part of the show where we talk about that. But yeah, no fix on that yet. So Microsoft keynote, I was very excited about this because it was more or less lunchtime. So I took my on Friday, and they had a live stream. So I thought, well, I'll do a late lunch, and I think it was 2:00, and I'll have my lunch while watching this keynote. And we did say that there will be nothing new as in terms of like a Surface or a phone or a Microsoft Band, but perhaps we expected at least something interesting to be shown off. But that really wasn't the case, was it?
I was sitting next to some other journalists, and they said, got to the end of it, and they said, well done, Microsoft, you just wasted an hour of my time.
And hour of your life you'll never get back.
I guess the thing is, what we have to remember is it wasn't a press conference; it was a keynote.
Yeah.
And keynotes are in IFA are actually slightly different. They don't tend to announce too much. Intel was an exception last year; they did announce stuff, but normally they're state of the market type things, and they're explaining to consumers potentially more than the press usually what's going on in the market and etc. So I guess that was where they were coming from. They were really explaining what Windows 10 had, but there was nothing new there at all. Everything had been announced previously. Everything we saw had been at other press conferences, other than one Toshiba device, which may have actually been at another conference available on Toshiba stand to look at anyway. But that was about the only thing which anybody picked up on. I was going to live blog from it, live tweet from it, but I couldn't find anything to tweet about. it was that interesting.
Back of a laptop.
Well, you missed the best part of it, really, because you were there. But during the demonstration of Windows 10, which was for the benefit of people who hadn't seen Windows 10, not for us that are using it, I can understand that. I don't have a problem with them, doing that for that audience, like you said, for that audience. But what the IFA people made the mistake of is they only showed. It was Brian, wasn't it? His name? I can't remember the demo guy. They only showed Brian. And not the screen, the Windows 10 screen. So
that would have been limiting.
Yeah, well, that's what they did. They'd never panned off his face ever. They left him in a single shot on his face, close shot on his face, which is quite animated. So that's okay. But he said, "And look at this! I've got Goat Simulator running over here," and we couldn't see any of that. We never saw a single screenshot of Windows 10.
Yeah. Some of that stuff was actually quite good as well, so that was definitely disappointing.
Yeah, it made the feed really disappointing. Now, I guess the feed wasn't really the main thing of that was to show it to for the IFA audience. So I guess that's not really a problem, but it made the feed pretty much useless during that demo because we couldn't see a single thing. I'm so glad he didn't go, and here's the new messaging app for Skype, and here's Threshold 2, and because he would have been a lot of it upset to bloggers as we were all trying to follow along.
I mean, my expectation of that keynote was, because it was kind of scheduled right for the end of the week, almost right at the end of IFA, that this was kind of going to be. So there was a lot of criticism around Windows 8 and how the OEMs didn't really step up to the plate and didn't really have hardware that necessarily made Windows 8 come alive. So that was what I was expecting. I was expecting it a roundup. Look, this is what all of our OEM partners have launched this week. Look at the innovative designs and look how it makes Windows 10 shine. And kind of like a bit of a tip of the hat to the OEMs that they may or may not have compromised in terms of having their own device lineup, which is potentially going to launch, in October. So, that's why I didn't actually watch it, but I certainly saw the Twitter feed light up. And I think that's why it was disappointing that you couldn't see the screens, because, that's what I was expecting to see.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's interesting actually, because although the structure of IFA is weird, because it actually was on the first public day.
Right.
So it's actually when IFA opens. It was the second keynote on the opening day, effectively. Although we'd obviously had all the press stuff up to that day, and it's the night most press people go home is the Friday night, having done the event. But so it's an interesting structure. So it was, if you as a sort of an intro to IFA, it was actually quite good because it guided you to places to look and see things. But certainly the other press conferences had more to show, and some of the stands had more to show. I mean, obviously we had the Lenovo Surface clone, which was quite cool.
Yeah,
and actually a very good device, and it shows the reason for going down that route with Microsoft. It really does start to push the OEMs to come up with well, maybe not innovative, but good design. But if they copy it, why not? I mean, it's a good design. It works, and that's a nice device for the price. It's going to be very competitive. And there was some good stuff. Acer had some good stuff. Asus had slightly less good stuff. Acer, of course, showed their Continuum phone off, which was quite an interesting thing, although they didn't really show it off. They only showed it off on stage. And then if you're really, really lucky, you might be able to get a slightly closer view of it, but you were certainly only getting your hands on it. But that looked really good. I mean, the demo they did on stage. What I actually found interesting, I was standing with some people who really didn't know what Continuum was, and they still didn't get it after that demo.
Right.
it wasn't really very well explained that you could actually run all your phone apps on it, all your Windows apps on it. You could run Office and everything like that. Once they got that, they were really excited about it. Until they got that, they didn't, and it wasn't really that well presented, I didn't think, in that respect. It looks a really nice phone. It's very businesslike. Almost could be the Surface phone. Obviously, it's got that sort of feel to it. But good spec and continuing works really, really well on it. If that's how it's going to work, I mean, it was a very short demo, but if that's how it's going to work, it's going to be very impressive.
I'm surprised that Microsoft didn't show that. I think they definitely made a decision to avoid phones completely.
Yeah, I think so. I think they were actually because one of the Microsoft guys was in the hall when the ACE demo was going off, and I was looking at his face, and he was grimacing at the fact they were actually demonstrating it. So, well, I assume that's why he was grimacing. It might be other reasons, but at the time they were demonstrating, he was definitely grimacing. So I think that there was obviously some concern that they were actually showing something off which wasn't ready to be shown off. But it worked well. I mean, it definitely gave a good impression. And I love the fact they're actually going to ship that with the dock. It's not an extra cost. It's actually going to come as part of the package.
It's just that they were pretty vague on details, weren't they? On
details and price they're vague on, but I've got some good Acer contacts now, and it sounds like it's going to be very competitive.
I was just really hoping to see some, under 8-inch Windows mobile based.
Yeah,
devices,
I think they're just not ready for those yet. We haven't seen anything around that way. I mean, to be honest, I think the whole of IFA was slightly disappointing this year. There wasn't really much from anybody. There was one absolutely amazing bit of technology which has got nothing, well, maybe slightly to do with computers, but absolutely nothing to do with just tablets, PCs, and everything like that. It actually came from a manufacturer of white goods. Have you ever heard of a company called Hyatt, which is probably the biggest manufacturer of fridges and freezers and washing machines worldwide? They have actually come up with a piece of technology which I think is probably going to change the world. It's amazing. So we often talk about solid state machinery replacing mechanical stuff. They've actually come up with a replacement for the refrigeration compressor.
Right.
Oh wow.
So in case, instead of having a mechanical compressor, they've actually got a solid state compressor, or in fact not a solid state compressor, but a solid state refrigerator and freezer. And they reckon they can scale it to freezing. It's quite a small unit. I was extrapolating this, and the possibilities of this are amazing, because once you get away from having to have all that mechanical stuff in there, the size, obviously the lack of noise, the amount of power using, no refrigerant, so it's really good for the environment, etc. But you've also got the thing that it's scalable down, so you can actually imagine putting a freezer in the box with the stuff you're selling, which then gets rid of your transportation issues, storage issues. You can put them on normal shelves. You don't have to have massive refrigerators in all the shops. It's just mind-blowing what that actually could lead to if marketed right. And because it's got a really big brand behind it, I don't think it's going to disappear. I think it's actually going to be really pushed out there. They started off with just showing a wine cooler using it, and I mean, to have something which is doing a refrigeration job and it's absolutely silent is amazing, and the power consumption was minuscule. But you can just take something like this. You've got a fan in your computer. Replace your fan, put one of these things on it.
That's just what I was thinking. That that's your cooling system.
And you could actually then see, well, you've got the heat then, which you could actually use to power the cooler. It's just one of those rotating things. It's just, there's a lot of, I mean, obviously not perpetual motion, but there was a lot of ideas of reusing heat to actually power the unit to actually cool it, which was quite mind-blowing. And so the power consumptions were minuscule, milliamps, not even sort of amps.
It's regenerative. What's it called? Regenerative. Yeah, which is like with the Formula One engines, where they take the heat from the engine and use that to power the engine.
Yeah. So, but it's basically that those sort of principles. But I mean, obviously, it needs to scale down. It's early days at the moment, but it was, to my mind, the best technology I saw there, the most innovative thing I saw there. Really, really impressive stuff. So, I mean, there was the usual stuff of things around IFA. There's some quite cool gadgety type things. I quite like the keyless bike lock.
Right.
You mount the bike lock on your frame. As you walk up to it, it recognises it's you, either from your phone or from a little fob you carry, and unlocks the bike. And as soon as you step off it, it locks.
And was there any 8-inch tablets? Because I didn't seem to be any of those either.
No tablets really at all in the Windows line, other than the 12-inch, 11-inch, and 10-inch. Well, I think I saw one 8-inch on the Toshiba stand, but that was one I'd seen previously. A lot of innovation around the 10-inch, 11-inch, 12-inch mark. There's a lot of new stuff coming out there. Some really good stuff coming out there.
Yeah, I'm just surprised that seems a market that was doing quite well sales wise, but just not really showing off.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, from my talking to people, the tablet market isn't actually doing that well. It's the small laptop market which is going really well at the moment.
Yes, maybe that's it. Yeah, because I think it was that Acer. Was it the Acer CloudBook?
Yeah, that's a CloudBook, which is and it's interesting that they were saying that the Chromebooks are actually their biggest seller by far at the moment. So that's an interesting thing. So you can see where the CloudBook comes into that lineup to try and combat that. Even though they're sort of combating themselves, but that was quite interesting. So other things I saw in a very interesting Israeli company with a whole home distributed TV system, bit like the Signal and Dust stuff for actually DVB-T owners. I'll get some information to Ian on this so you can put in those show notes. But I quite like their system. The idea was clever because they'd actually built a web browser, a web server into the TV box, which you could then use to actually tune in, choose your channels. It had EPG data on it, but you could also record on the box as well, just attach a USB stick or a hard drive to it, and it became a recorder. So actually quite a good media center replacement in a lot of ways, because it could then stream. You could obviously use the web browser to look at it, but it also did DLNA as well. So it had a whole lot of different ways you could actually get the content out of it. I think it had an MB client and a couple of other things as well. And very cheap as well, which was good. So, and there was a couple of other things. There's a very good home automation hub. I mean, obviously, Samsung announced that they were bringing smart things across here, which is a very big hub in the States. Funny enough, I was talking to Richard Gunther because I'm on Home On, I think, in a couple of days' time, or maybe next week. We were talking about that, how that hadn't come into the UK. Well, that's going to be available over here. And a few other things. I know there was a really good home automation system, which we'll get more information on as it comes to more fruition, which is sort of in the early days, but that's got so many different transmitters and amplifiers in it. It can basically control anything you throw at it, which I thought was really good. So I'll get some more information on as well. But generally, there wasn't that much at IFA. It was a very, compared to last year where I picked up loads of stuff, it was quite a poor event, I thought.
Yeah, last year I remember you got quite a lot of videos of different bits and pieces that were quite interesting. But
there wasn't really anything to take to video this year. I mean, I've actually seen more since I've got back than I've actually saw at IFA. I had a really good demo yesterday of a product from a company called Falmic Labs. I don't know if you've come across them. It's called the Myo, MYO.
No.
And it's a gesture control armband.
A gesture control what?
Armband.
Right.
So this is actually something you wear at the top of your arm, not on your wrist, but it's like a big bracelet, and you wear it on top of your arm, and it actually senses all the muscle movements and the tendon movements. So it actually works out exactly what you're doing. So it can even detect a click of your fingers, a finger moving out and down, very subtle movements.
Right, through the muscle movement.
Through the muscle and the nerves. It's got nerve sensing there. So, and it's incredibly accurate when we're playing with it. And it does really give you that Minority Report thing, because you're no longer tied to positioning with the screen. You can do these gestures anywhere. We were doing sort of a demo where we had a presentation going in the back, and every time you want to change slide, you just click your fingers and the slide changed. I know you can do that, press buttons and things, but it frees your hands up. You've got nothing to do there. Or you can make gesture. I mean, they had gesture control games. They are switch a light, switch on by pointing at it effectively. So all sorts of things which you could do with this. But remarkable technology in how well it works and how precise it is. It's far more precise than any of the other motion sensors I've seen. What you can actually do with it. And it integrates really well with Windows. I was saying we were Skyping earlier, and I actually was typing virtually on the screen using this thing.
That's what you, yeah.
So my hand was actually typing in midair with the keyboard miles away on the big screen. And that worked incredibly well. I mean, I wouldn't want to type loads and loads of stuff on it, but it was good enough to do it, hold a Skype conversation. And you can do a virtual mouse with it. You can do all that sort of stuff with it. But it really comes in its own with small gestures, very subtle gestures for doing certain things. I said like doing presentations and there's a lot of games already out there with it embedded into it, which adds quite a lot of functionality to that. But what really impressed me is just the technology, because this stuff they use is similar stuff that they use in some of the medical equipment.
Right.
And so I've there's a piece of equipment, medical equipment, which uses 2 of the sensors they're using, and I know it retails for hundreds of thousands of dollars, and this thing is going to retail for less than £200, and it's got, I think, 6 or 8 sensors in it. So it's incredible what they've actually managed to do and actually get it working, and it works really, really well.
Well, so look at that. So you're gonna have a review of that on Fascinating Tech.
Yeah, it can be a review. Probably Fascinating Tech. I might do a digital lifestyle one as well for you. So, but it's really good. I've got it for a few weeks, so I should be playing with it and putting as much into it as I can to see how it works. But it's one of those things. It's really weird because you think something up on your arm would be really uncomfortable, but you forget you're wearing it after a while. It just doesn't. You don't notice it at all. It's like wearing a watch. You don't notice it.
Yeah, it's like the band's a bit like that. At first you do, and then you eventually don't notice it.
It was one of the interesting things with talking to the guy, because I was talking to the CEO, and he said that they actually deliberately took that decision to have it up the arm because they didn't want something which would bang into things on your wrist. So typing and things like that is actually quite difficult with stuff on your wrist, and it does. It's true. It gets out of the way. It's not something you notice.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. I look forward to reading that. Now, you were Skyping with me earlier on, and me and Jason, we were sending messages backwards and forwards, and I was using the new messaging app for Windows 10. I don't know if you got to try this yet.
I haven't yet, but it does look good.
Yeah. So this is with Windows 10. Microsoft, as Jason, I think you said when we started recording, but they've got rid of the modern version of Skype, and we're using the old desktop one. Because they're splitting up Skype's features into the separate apps in Windows 10. Windows 10 Mobile has got those first, and I'm not sure whether they plan to release this, but there was no fanfare announcement or blog post to go. It was just there in the store. I've got it installed on my 630 test machine running Windows 10, and it works all right, really. So the main difference seems to be you've got the messaging app in Windows Phone. In this now, you've got a messaging app with Skype app. So we were messaging backwards and forwards today on Skype, but you could choose to send it via SMS. So it's a combined app that handles via text or via text SMS or via Skype.
Yes,
so
it's like a universal messaging app.
Yeah.
Because there's this whole new messaging protocol that most of the phone companies have signed up to, which allows integration of things like Skype and also Apple's Messenger, iMessage stuff as well. So I guess they're using similar to that.
Yeah, but essentially, this new app replaces the old app, and it handles all the messaging. And then you can, if you do want to call someone on Skype for a phone, you just use the phone app and call it that way. And then there's a separate app that does Skype video calling. So they're breaking it down into the 3 components, and so the phone and the messaging part just are integrated into the standard Windows app. So yeah, they look quite good. I did find using it today though that we were having a conversation and it came up with the notifications, and then put the phone down, and then maybe you replied, and in that time the phone had gone back, switched, gone back into sleep mode, and it didn't tell me about the notification, whereas you would normally expect it to come on when you get an SMS. So hopefully they'll fix that. So the only device that told me there was a message was my 1520, and it told me using the old Skype Skype app. So yeah, so all the devices I had, the only one that was really up to date with the notifications and messages was the 1520 running Windows Phone 8.1. So all the other Windows 10 and everything else, none of them were coming through. Hopefully they'll fix that. So that's available now in the App Store, and you've got the insider preview of Windows Phone 10.
Interesting. I mean, that's the way that Windows Phone 7 worked, isn't it? How it integrated SMS and Windows Live Messenger as it was back then. So it's kind of, it's taken them another four years, but they've finally got back to that.
I mean, it's how on Android, if you use the I think on by default now. It didn't used to be, but it is now, and it certainly is on the Nexus. The Google Hangouts app, which handles the messaging for text messaging and calling, but you get your SMSs through that, and that's the same with iMessage on iPhone. It's one app that handles both services. And I think on the iPhone it's green if it's an iMessage and blue if it's a text, or the other way around, something like that. And this has a little indicator which you can see in the blog post when I've done that. So that's not for Windows 10 mobile, not for the desktop build yet. I guess that's the version the Universal apps will get in the Threshold 2. But with no new build of Windows 10 mobile this week, in fact, we've not had one since the 12th of August now. So did you see Gable's post about the builds today?
I've seen that he's made a post. I haven't had a chance to read it yet. But I mean, in fact, not only Windows 10 mobile, we're also missing obviously Windows 10 desktop. Although I have to say, I think they've took the right decision to hold that back, since it's a Hyper-V related issue.
Yes.
So I fully support that decision.
So what Gabe posted, and when you look at his Twitter feed, it's just people asking when we get new builds. He must be getting really sick of this stuff. I am very impressed by his patience.
Very well, yes, yeah. I don't know if you saw my tweet on Monday, since it was Labor Day. I tweeted on behalf of Gable and said no new builds today.
Yeah. But he said that the reason why there hasn't been any builds is their internal test procedures work. So they have essentially an internal fast and slow ring. So you get a build candidate, it goes on the fast ring, everything's okay. So it goes onto their internal slow ring, everything's okay, and it goes to Windows Insiders on the fast ring. If something goes wrong, then the respective, if there's a bug, the respective feature owner then fixes that, and they go back to the internal testing again. And so they go through that whole sort of procedure again to make sure that the fix for that bug hasn't introduced something else. I mean, it's easily done when you fix one thing and break something else. So they've got that cycle in there. What Gabe said is this happened 3 times with the last 3 builds, is that they've got as far as the slow ring internal testing, found an issue, and then had to go back to the that has to get fixed. Then it goes back to the fast ring, and that's really what caused the issues. Is for why we've had no build since August 12th.
Yeah, because Gabe said before, wasn't he, the problem with the Windows 10 mobile is they can't forward fix. So, but what we had with the Windows 10 desktop release is occasionally they would release it highlight a bug, but a couple of days later you get it fixed through Windows Update, or maybe through an app update. But unfortunately, Windows 10 mobile doesn't have that type of servicing.
Yeah. So what they've said is that they've explained the process and the testing process. You can read the blog post. I'll include a link in the show notes, and a nice little diagram showing you how we got the last build and when we might have one now. But what he did say is that he says the good news is that we believe we have fixed the issues for blocking us from flighting a new Windows 10 Insider build, and we're going through the internal rings now. So they're on the internal testing now. So maybe we'll see a build tomorrow. I don't know how much lead time they need or testing time, but we'll tomorrow or Friday maybe.
Oh, they never release builds on Fridays.
Yeah.
I think, to be honest, I'm sure if you went back and looked at all the build releases, I'm sure the majority of them have been Fridays.
Yeah, I think it's almost a standard joke now that they say that they actually do release almost everything has gone out late on Friday, so they don't have to worry about it over the weekend.
Yeah. Although from what he's been saying, I think they're all working pretty long shifts at the moment trying to get this thing done. I think it's interesting they're still not ready to talk about any kind of release date for this, and obviously I appreciate with Windows 10 Mobile that the whole carrier situation comes into the mix. So I'd imagine we'll probably get to hear that date quite late in the cycle.
Yeah, and I still think they'll try and somehow combine that with the Threshold 2. Because the same branch, essentially, aren't they? They're both.
Yeah. Because what I'm wanting to wait to the release of Windows 10 Mobile is part of it also thinks I don't want to get caught like some people did with the Windows 10 desktop, where if you didn't have the Insiders build installed, they kind of had that dead time where you couldn't actually then install a build. So I'm still waiting for that Windows 10 Mobile build that I feel stable enough to worth risking.
Well, they said that the next build has fixed the issue with the quiet hours and the mobile hotspot. So the mobile hotspot was the issue that really was blocking me. But having said that, I have had issues getting the upgrade process to work. So I'm a bit wary about doing it on my main phone until I see the upgrade process work a bit smoother. But yeah, I definitely want to get it on my 1520 now. I'm ready for it now. So I'll include a link to Gabe's post in the show notes so you can see that. But maybe by the time we're recording this on Wednesday evening, there won't be a build by the time this podcast is released, hopefully. But there may be one on Thursday evening. You never know. Right, we're coming to the end of the show, but I had to give Jason his chance. So for a bit of a rant. So
yeah, the wonderful world of media.
So yesterday, Microsoft announced that Disney Movie Anywhere, their digital locker, digital cloud store, their cloud store or storage system, I guess it would be more. Now works with the Microsoft Movies and TVs app. So that means that you can buy movies with movies and TVs or on Amazon, because it also now links with Amazon or iTunes, and then you can watch it on any of the devices. So, Jason, have you got all this working?
No, I have not.
Why haven't you been working?
Because it's US only, which is just stupid. It's like, there are people that will download movies and whatnot illegally. I don't support that or condone it at all. But, it does come down to the fact that, if you make this stuff easy, the majority of people will happily pay you money. If you make it difficult, they'll find another way. But basically the Disney Movies Anywhere is their equivalent of Ultraviolet. Now, why they can't just do what everyone else does and sign up to Ultraviolet, I've no idea, but they insist on having their own digital locker system. And the main issue here isn't so much anything to do with Microsoft's movies and TV service or even Amazon's. It's that currently the Disney Movies Anywhere is a US only service, and it's just, I understand that there'll be issues with, distributors. So, for example, using the music world as an example, Amazon wanting to sell tracks from or stream tracks from a certain artist have got to get that record company's permissions. But in this case, it's Disney owns the rights to those movies. They are the distributor. So the fact that, they can't allow distribution rights outside of the US is just, it's Stone Age. It's just absolutely ridiculous. Because, the risk, the thing that's always made me nervous, and, we talk about this all the time. So the example I use time and time again is the Xbox video service, the film Pulp Fiction, which you could purchase. That movie, their rights to it expired at December 2013. It's back in the store now. But essentially, if you purchased that movie and parted with your cash, there was no guarantee that you could then watch that film or download it in the future. And that's what these digital lockers are supposed to work around. It's supposed to give you the reassurance that you can buy the movie from any service, but it will be locked away in your vault. And then if that service decides to stop, either loses the rights to it or goes under or decides to rebrand and stop doing those types of films, that, you've still got your digital copy securely stored. But for some reason, Ultraviolet is an odd one. It's now available quite widely over here. It's, we talked about it. The Sainsbury's video app supports it. Blinkbox supports it. Unfortunately, Microsoft still don't. But you still get odd quirks whereby, so Star Wars: A New Hope, which is still owned by Fox and not Disney, if you buy that film in the US, you get Ultraviolet rights, but in the UK, it doesn't include them. So, that again, I can kind of understand, because that's a Fox issue, and there's obviously many complications around the rights to that movie, considering it should really be with Disney. But just the fact that this service that Disney offer is US only is, just wrong.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it, when really the only surefire way of being able to control content you own is to buy the physical disc version and rip it. I mean,
yes,
it seems crazy in 2015 that is the only way of doing it, but yeah, that really is the only way of doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. I hadn't realised that until this week when I started looking into it, that Disney Movies Anywhere was US only. I thought it was, available globally, but it wasn't something that I was interested in doing, because there wasn't a Disney Movies app on any of the platforms that I use. And when I saw the announcement at the time with Microsoft, because I've got movies that I would buy. I'd love to buy the Avengers movies. I'd love to buy the Star Wars movies in digital copies. I think at the moment, I've got Iron Man 3 and the original Avengers movie, which is bought through Xbox Video as it was. Now, if I was to then link that to Disney, they would automatically give me a digital locker copy of those movies.
So you can have the Little Mermaid. You can watch it on the surface.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. But I think I just need to let it go.
No.
And on that rather poor bombshell, I think we'll leave it for this week. So
yes, before I really get going.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we've given you airtime. What you don't know is that none of that will be included in the show. I'll just end it with end it before then. So
yeah. I think you should just make that part of the show only available to US listeners.
Yeah.
Well, it's only applicable to UK listeners. So I think during that bit we'll just have some background music.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, Jess, where can we find your rants and raves?
You can find me ranting and raving on Twitter at Database Jace.
Very good. Now you can go and do some Apple ranting and raving now if you want.
Yeah.
And Gary, where can we find you and your amazing new fridges?
Yeah, well, you can find me on Gary WA on Twitter and also Fascinating Tech. And we've got the latest Fascinating Tech issue out, and there'll be another one following very shortly for the EFA special. The few things I did find around EFA to talk about.
Excellent stuff. So we should be back next Tuesday evening, 9 p.m. UK time for our regular recording. Well, we maybe we'll have a new build to talk about by then. That would be rather nice. And watch the Apple keynote so we can talk about that as well. If there's anything else you think we should be talking about, you can email me, ian@thedigitallifestyle.com, at ISDixon on Twitter. So until next week, we'll see you then.
Take care.
Cheerio.
Excellent.